President Obama announced that he's withdrawing more troops from Afghanistan. Do you support that? And also, do you support Chuck Hagel?
Yeah, we got to talk about Afghanistan before we leave here.
Yeah.
And Hagel. You know, let me just tell you something interesting. And this is how fast this country moves. When I was elected to Congress, it was 2007. In the middle of the heat of the Iraq War, right? The worst months of casualties for U.S. troops were sort of surrounding my election to the House of Representatives. And so when I did my first town hall meeting in early 2007, I didn't even think to do a general town hall meeting like this. I knew that I had to do the town hall meeting on only one thing. And I did it on the war in Iraq. And I a massive turnout for the town hall. Fast forward now to today, when, you know, an hour and 20 minutes in, we're getting our first question on a war that still has tens of thousands of Americans fighting it. And I'll tell you, honestly, a lot of times I do town hall meetings, I don't get a single question on foreign policy at all. And that's just sort of, I'm more just sort of saying that because it's interesting how fast this country moves in terms of the attention it pays to foreign affairs, because we still have a war that's killing lots and lots of Americans, and frankly sending back very damaged bodies and minds back home. So here's where I am in the Afghanistan war. Let me answer the two questions directly. On the Afghanistan war, I think it's time to get everybody out and get everybody out as safely and as quickly as possible. I'll tell you one quick story just to illustrate why I think this war is so crazy. So I was over there a couple of years ago. I think it was the last time I was over there, and we went outside the wire to a small town in western Afghanistan in the province of Herat. And we went to this tiny little town to sort of see a place where the surge, the sort of Afghan surge of American troops was happening for the first time. And there's 6 members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, we're walking through this town, and it's a beautiful little town. And we're walking through these streets surrounded by these beautiful fields of purple flowers. And we started sort of looking at each other and saying, is that what we think it is? Are we walking through a town filled with poppy? Like, did the army bring us to a town filled with poppy production? And we watched even further as the Afghans were out harvesting the poppy, protected by American troops. The fields were fed by irrigation canals built with American taxpayer dollars. And we asked the Afghan elders, we said, so what's going on here? They said, well, that's poppy. And I said, well, where do you send it? And they say, oh, well, the Taliban comes every couple weeks and picks it up and takes it. Right? Takes the poppy, sells it for money that is then used to buy arms to fight the very troops that are there protecting. But we don't have a strategic imperative to be there like we did initially, and we need that money. I mean, we're spending $2 billion a week in Afghanistan. That's money that should not be on my kid's credit card right now. Hagel, I support Hagel's nomination. It's sort of being hung up now for issues that are not connected to Hagel. It's being held up because the Republicans have a lot of questions about the attack on the compound in Benghazi that they want answered, and so until those questions get answered, they're not going to let Hagel go for a vote. But I support Hagel. I believe generally in giving deference to the president's choices unless there's a serious deficiency. And you know, I think Hagel's an interesting guy, right? I don't agree with him on a lot of things. He's a Republican and a pretty strong Republican on a lot of issues. But at a moment when we are going to be cutting the defense budget, there's no way around that. To have somebody who spent his life thinking about the politics of that department, who spent years as a decorated enlisted soldier, who saw defense spending at the ground floor, not just at the top floor, I think that would be really, really helpful. All right, we have time for a few more.
Chris, I am a lifelong hunter, but I support gun control measures. Obviously, as you can see from this room, people get pretty heated about this issue. How can we have a rational discussion, and how rational is the discussion in Washington?
That's a loaded question. No, but listen, I understand. So this is getting to be a little bit more rational conversation, and we'll continue it a little bit after this. All I've been trying to say to you today is that I want to have a rational discussion on this. That the motives that are imputed to people who who want gun control are not mine, and I frankly would argue that they're not most people who are interested in gun control. There isn't an interest to completely abrogate the Second Amendment or take people's guns away, and I hope that we can have a little bit more dispassionate debate about it than we maybe had for a few minutes here, but it is heated, right? It is heated. I mean, anytime you're talking about constitutional rights, it's passionate, and frankly, it should be passionate. You know, and I think we've sort of gotten to a better place here today, but you know, when you're talking about the rights of this nation that people have fought and died for, right? Not just in the initial inception of war in the 1770s, but in dozens of wars afterwards. Like, you should be passionate about standing up and protecting the rights that you believe in. I don't agree with the interpretation of some people in this room as to what they think the Second Amendment is versus what I think it is, but I'm proud of the fact that when people feel like their rights are being violated, they stand up and defend them. That's what our nation is about. And if we didn't do that, not just on the Second Amendment, but on the Fourth Amendment and on the First Amendment, then we kind of stop being what we historically have been as a nation. Now, I say that, I say that, and I also, but I also want to let you know that I don't, the fears that people have of the federal government, sort of, you know, swooping in and stealing people away, that you need to be so heavily armed to protect yourself against the federal government. I do want to be clear that I don't think we live in that world. That I don't think we live in a world in which people need to be so heavily armed so that the purpose of that armament is to protect themselves against the government. And frankly, I would argue with you that in a world where the government has, you know, F-16s and nuclear weapons, an assault weapon probably isn't going to do the trick. But now I'm getting into it. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that. Let me dial it back. My point here really is just to say I don't mind the raised voices of the passion, because that's what this country is built on, is people being passionate about defending their rights, and we wouldn't be the United States of America if that wasn't the case.
Maybe you would ask the police